Okay, we'll get started. Councilor Payne, could you please read us out of closed session?
Yes. I move that this council certify by recorded vote that to the best of each council member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and identified in the motion convening the closed session were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed session.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please cast your votes. All right, thank you. We will begin our meeting tonight with a moment of silence. Okay, are there any announcements?
One thing I suppose I should announce, since we had an official proclamation from the mayor in celebration. Many of you may remember Betts Gleason, who was councilor from 1980 to 1988 and vice mayor for a couple of terms there, celebrated her 100th birthday this past week. And so we had a little proclamation in Beth's honor and thanking her for her many years of service to not only the council but to the community as a whole.
Great, thank you.
And I would just announce a reminder that boards and commissions are actively accepting applications through October 30th. Those boards which are seeking applications include the Affordable Housing Fund Committee, Board of Architectural Review, Building Code Board of Appeals, Community Development Task Force, Criminal Justice Board, Housing Advisory Commission, Minority Business Commission, Rivanna River Basin Commission, Social Services Board, Water and Sewer Authority Board, YMCA Board, Youth Council, and others. And for anybody in the community who's interested in seeing change in Charlottesville, many of these committees accepting applications have direct control over how money is allocated to affordable housing projects as well as other important real city decisions. So again, those applications are being accepted through October 30th, and you can find more information on charlottesville.gov/boards-commissions, or you could just Google Charlottesville Boards and Commissions.
Thank you.
I've got a couple things. First, I want to congratulate the Ravenna Trails Foundation and everyone who participated in the Loop de Ville yesterday, which is a annual trail walk circumnavigating all of Charlottesville. It's about 20 miles. There was a great turnout, both walkers, runners, and then also bikers who did it, and then a after party at the Ravenna River Company. It was hugely successful from my perspective, especially considering it had to be rescheduled a couple days before due to the hurricane and the trail cleaned up. I participated in it. I did 42,000 steps. I'm very sore right now, but it was really cool to get to see the city from a new perspective and to see how much trail access we have without even having to go up to the mountains. So that was awesome, and I look forward to doing it again next year, I think.
Excellent.
And then I just want to say a quick word. I know a lot of people probably saw the news last Thursday. We had a pedestrian fatality in Charlottesville. A 64-year-old woman, Mamawa Samai, was killed in the incident, and I hope I speak on behalf of all of us up here that we were heartbroken to learn of that, and that we are going to try to do what we can to continue making improvements to bike pedestrian infrastructure in this city.
Thank you. And Mr. Sanders is going to speak some more tonight when we get to the city manager's report, but thank you for that. Are there any items for recognition? I think we've already hit on that. Okay, great. So there are 8 pre-registered speakers for Community Matters, leaving 8 slots for additional speakers on Community Matters. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. We will now open the floor to pre-registered speakers. Is our first speaker available? Is that Mr. Krebs? Peter, come on up.
Good evening. I'm Peter Krebs. I live on Tufton Avenue, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Piedmont Environmental Council, which is located on Water Street. Yesterday, I witnessed hundreds of people walking, running, biking around Charlottesville at the annual Loop DeVille Trail Fest. Thanks to the many of you who came out, participated, volunteered, and supported. It was a beautiful and joyful day, and I'm grateful for it, as I am for every day. Yet, there was also a heaviness in my heart because I couldn't stop thinking about the precious life of Ms. Amai that was lost last week on Elliott Avenue. My respects to all who knew and who loved her. I was reminded that before my current job, I actually worked at NDS right when the bike ped master plan came out. And that document identified this very stretch of Elliott as a high priority. And it's no surprise why. Many people live there. It's actually densely populated, and there are especially many public housing residents that live there. It would be practical to walk around there if it were safe. So it's no surprise to have someone walking. An unfortunate reality of that street is a lot of vehicles move through there at very high velocity, very often on their way to somewhere else. So crossing there can be harrowing or actually even deadly. I'm sure that you've been hearing from people who feel the way that I do. And I think they're going to bring some good suggestions. I especially favor those ones that factor the speed and try to limit that, because that's the real culprit here. But it's not just Elliott that we're talking about. The same situation plays out all across the city. I'm thinking right now about 5th Street, Free Bridge, West Main Street, on and on. These are commuter corridors that divide neighborhoods and separate us from one another. There's going to be a lot of work to do, and it's going to be quite expensive. But this is what cities do. Cities build sidewalks, and it's our collective responsibility to do it. Let's remember also that not fixing this stuff is even more expensive. What's the value of a human life? It's incalculable. And so let's go forward and make improvements at an accelerated rate, one that reflects the stakes that are at play here. That's life and death. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Daniel Miller.
Hey everybody, Dan Miller. I live at 1107 Avon Street. I'm normally loath to read off of a sheet, but I think I'm too angry right now to to not do it, so I'm just going to read. I've called and written the city for about 3 years regarding traffic calming in Belmont. I've specifically mentioned this exact spot multiple times to multiple traffic engineering staff. I've been told multiple times that there haven't been enough accidents on Avon or Elliott or Monticello to institute traffic calming. I was once told not enough people have died to implement traffic calming in these areas. We need raised divided crosswalks on these streets. These are neighborhoods where people live, and being told by the traffic engineer that we need to prioritize commuters over residents is unacceptable. If you go up to Alexandria, you can see these crosswalks all over their arterial roads. They allow for emergency vehicles to travel through the area at full speed, but they slow down normal traffic. And I think I'm preemptively furious about having to come back here and do this again, because we have right up the road on Elliott a ghost bike where somebody was killed in the same area. So I just want to keep emphasizing something like a raised divided crosswalk is the answer. And I'll yield the rest of my time because I'm sure more people want to talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Micaiah Walker. Hi, Ms. Walker.
Hi. Good evening.
Good evening.
I want to read a couple of things. Most of you received, well, all of you received an email from me, and I spoke with some of you about what I learned recently at Kendallwood and Friendship Court. Well, Old Friendship Court, Kendallwood. A reminder that the federal government defines affordability as no more than 30% of your income spent on rent, mortgage payment, utilities, taxes, insurance, and other housing-related expenses. I also want to read some comments that you all received from the director there in October of '23. During public comments, we heard some residents in historically exclusionary neighborhoods state that they don't want change. They like the way their neighborhoods are now. I respectfully submit that this perspective fails to acknowledge a fundamental truth. Change has been and will continue to take place. I've been reviewing over the past just a short week, the 2017 form-based code housing needs. I've been reviewing documents that were submitted to us from PHA when I was on council. And what I have been most upset with myself about is what I missed, because I was thinking that what was intended to happen, to provide housing for those at the lowest income levels, was what was going to happen. I have since learned that when we talk about AMI, which is drastically different today from what it was when we started having these conversations in 2017, those needs assessments, if you go back and look, said to prioritize the lowest, below 30 income level. I learned last week that what PHA is doing is 30%, 50%, 60%, and 80%. And that it's not prioritizing the people that was placed on that land when they had nowhere else to go when it was Garrett. I walked down there twice, including on my way here today, and you don't see a lot of Black families who were the people placed on that land and lived there at a time. And what I'm hearing from families and the email that I sent to y'all was that they cannot afford what me being on council at the time, and you have signed on to, some of you in phase 1 and others in phase 2. It needs to be looked at closely, the performance agreement, the taxes that it's being returned. I have a lot of questions about the tax rate, how it was initially assessed, what happened in those years between 2017, what is happening with that money. When we give $5.5 million, where is it going through? And more, I know it's more, but I'm just throwing off the first figure. What is it going to, and what's being prioritized? I have a lot more to say. My time is up and I have to stop. But I know a lot of people were on the list for the Belmont traffic calming. I live in that neighborhood. One of the things that I haven't heard people say in the discussions, and I hope someone will say here, why is a 64-year-old woman going to work? I was going by when I saw that accident. It's more than just traffic calming. It's that people can't afford to live here. And it was dark when I saw the light, so this person was going to work in the evenings at 64 years old. That's part of the discussion.
Thank you. Eileen Bartels.
Good evening. My name is Eileen Bartels. I live at 710 Stonehenge Avenue, and I am speaking today about the tragic death of Mamawa Simai. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing her name, but I did want to say her name, who was struck and killed by a driver as she crossed Elliott Avenue at First Street. I live near there and have crossed Elliott many times myself, and that is an extremely difficult intersection. Drivers are coming downhill from both directions and often speeding. That is also where I was in an accident on my bicycle when a driver on First Street failed to yield to me as I was crossing on my bike at Elliott. It's very hard to find a break in the traffic at certain times of day, and there is a wide, expansive road to cross. For too long, Charlottesville residents have had to contend with crossings like this. It has only been in the last few years that the city bothered to put a painted crosswalk at Elliott and First, even though a bus stop has always been on that corner. I, too, had exchanged emails with former bike ped coordinator Amanda Ponce about safety on Elliott at Avon and Elliott coming all the way from the intersection at 5th Street. I urge you to adopt the suggestions from Livable Seaville: bump outs, a raised crosswalk, improved lighting, including flashing pedestrian signal, and a protected bike lane along Elliott Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you. Radelli Denise Banks.
I would like to give my time to Roscoe.
Okay.
Mr. Boxley, it does have a slot on the list. Do you
Okay.
want to speak sooner and take your name off later?
I would like to combine the 2 times, please.
You can have one slot for 3 minutes, so it's fine to go ahead.
Okay. I do pay tax, though.
Okay,
right?
that's great. Thank you,
All
sir.
right, well, my name is Roscoe Boxley. I'm a small vendor, and I'm homeless.
Okay.
A lot of people are wondering about what y'all gonna do about homelessness. I know Mr. Saunders last year came up with some kind of plan that had a whole bunch of beautiful words on it, but I don't really see a whole lot of things happening, and I see more homeless people, and I see the cost of living going up even more. I think that the problem don't got nothing to do with homelessness. The problem don't have nothing to do with the people that are homeless. It has to do with y'all. The way that y'all do business. We have repeatedly watched y'all come in this chamber and favor, even though you speak as if you have disdain for these companies that are building in our city, and you still take the money. You still take the money, and you still let them do what they want to do, and that is driving the cost of living up, and there are people all over the place. Even your officers are struggling. You guys are asking for more money for your wages. This cannot be something that we pay you tax monies. You don't come and tell us what you're going to do with our tax money. We tell you, we pay your bills. You wipe your butt because we pay you. So now we want our money. And we have a lot of people up in here tonight that feels the same way. We want our money back, and we want it in the form of a grant. So we're going to come together as a community. Chief, you ready for white supremacy? Because they definitely coming. Homelessness is not the underlying issue. Everything has an origin. And it's known because different people are homeless for different reasons. We have a web of things that we have to address. And we don't need y'all in no secret chamber making no secret deals with no companies with our tax money and then telling us you don't got no money to help. It is 22 million millionaires in the United States of America. You know how many salaries that is? 287,103 millionaires in Virginia. 7 billionaires, 6 of them on Forbes. This year, we're coming for the money. We're going to organize together. Diversity is key. You need diverse understanding to graduate. You need diverse portfolio to be successful. You guys need diversity. You need diverse understanding in different positions. That's why you got different names and doing different things. We need to do this together. And if y'all ain't gonna push, we're pushing as a community.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I know it.
Tyler Miller.
Hi, my name is Tyler Miller. I'm a member of the Tree Commission, but I'm here at my own volition. I think that Mr. Roscoe made some excellent points. I think we would be wise to listen to him. I'm actually here to speak about pedestrian safety. I share the council's it being heartbroken, but I'm also outraged and I'm angry. I think that it's no surprise that the places on Elliott that where the speed limit goes up are the places where the income is lower. That whole stretch should be 25 miles an hour max. I've heard all kinds of arguments for it being faster. It's a route to the hospital. I think that emergency vehicles can go faster than the speed limit, is my understanding. It is hard to speak through the anger, having seen this coming, having I installed a camera on my house because it looks over an intersection, not because I don't trust my neighbors, but because I know someone is going to get hit there. And I want to have the license plate of the car that does it in case they don't stop, like this young man did stop. you know, raise the sidewalks, you know, a single solar light for a crosswalk is $30. You could do a whole crosswalk for $300. That's $247,000 to do all the crosswalks in the city. You know, do something. There's, you know, just you haven't done anything on this stretch. It's 2 fatalities since I've lived there now. I'm sure that there are more. It's time for you guys to do something. And I think that using the last minute of my time to sit here and in silence for Mamawa Samai. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bill Emery.
Bill Emery, Woolen Mills. I speak to an issue that epitomizes the city's lack of transparency and institutional memory. The proposed functional reclassification of close to half the streets in the Woolen Mills neighborhood. In August, the reclassification of regional streets was before the NPO Policy Board. To date, no one from the city has communicated, much less collaborated with the people that live next to the affected roads. What does the reclassification mean for a neighborhood? Motor vehicles and their accoutrements have mutated the earth. Greenhouse gas emissions from transportation account for 28% of U.S. emissions. In regards to city neighborhoods and residents, roads have profound acoustic, environmental, and health impacts. It's difficult to cite a case where widening a street through a neighborhood has, by many metrics, improved the health or quality of life for its residents. Under the proposed reclassification, Market Street, Chesapeake, and Franklin would potentially be designed like Elliott Avenue, the place Ms. Samai died last week. From an engineer's point of view, the minor collector market would be the best road imaginable, a 50-foot right-of-way replete with sidewalks, crosswalks, aluminum guardrails, a posted speed limit of 35 miles per hour, and a design speed of 60. The proposed reclassifications are for the comfort of motor vehicles. They facilitate the rapid movement of kinetic killing instruments through our neighborhoods. When struck by a low-profile vehicle traveling 25, you have a good survival chance. If you are struck by a commercial vehicle or a Cadillac Escalade at 45, you, your bicycle, the child in the stroller, you're all severely broken or dead. When we consider sustainable planning, we need to consider more than mainlining commuters inappropriately through our local neighborhood streets. Everything we do to make driving easier is going to encourage driving. We need to push for mode shift. Local streets are the commons of our neighborhoods. You come onto the street to see what the community is up to. Walk down Market Street on a Saturday. You'll see people on foot carrying groceries, pushing strollers, walking, talking, cycling, making their way to the river. Market is currently an unbiased street, a street that does not prefer one mode of transportation over another, be it walking, cycling, driving, jogging, or horse riding. To be completely unbiased, we cannot dedicate any of the street surface to only one mode. It is a shared space. Please retract the reclassification request immediately. Don't create a hellscape. Thank you.
Thank you. Francis Allen.
Hello, my name is Frankie Allen. I live on Green Street in Charlottesville. I am a nurse who lives and works in this community, and I'm here to talk about traffic safety as a public health crisis. I think as many people before me have already discussed the tragedy in our community this week, and I think I would also like to, in addition to acknowledging the loss of Mama Sawai, I would also like to acknowledge 19-year-old Matthew Kozub, whose life has been irrevocably changed by the failure of our infrastructure to create safe movement through the city. I think that we all know the reasons that Elliott is dangerous, and as someone who drives on it every day to go to and from work at dusk, either early in the morning or late in the evening, I think it's clear that we need to implement change. I support the things that other people have brought up, including raising the sidewalks, improving better lighting, and I would also argue that the width of the road at that point is part of what is so dangerous. If you are a car driving, it is so hard to see both the traffic that's coming towards you as well as to actually be able to see whether or not there are people who are trying to cross. I think that this would be a great opportunity to narrow the road, to lower the speed limit, and to also implement a protected bike lane so that more people who are headed on that corridor, especially into the university and into the hospital, can do so safely. I urge you to do a reevaluation of traffic safety in this city. It is a public health concern. We have to, first and foremost, protect the people who live in Charlottesville. No one should have to give their life while going to work, regardless of whether or not they should be 64 and working, because we don't have the social supports that we need in our community. Everyone, regardless of the mode of transportation they take, has the right to be safe. I think in just the time remaining, I'd like to point out some other areas in addition to Elliott that concern me as a nurse who lives and works in this community. I would like to see a crosswalk returned to the far side of Avon and Market Street, where we recently completed a bridge, and I've seen so many people, the people who live in this community who have to walk to work to get groceries, to get food, having to jaywalk or having to divert because there's no longer a crosswalk across Avon at Market on both sides. I would also like to see better sidewalks and better lit sidewalks for the children in Charlottesville who walk to school, who wait for buses. I'd like to see lower speed limits at all of the entry points of the city so that we prioritize the people who live in the city rather than the people from the county and elsewhere who are commuting in to work. I think our duty is to the children and to the people who live here. I also would like to see more protected bike lanes, especially on Market Street, especially on Elliott, so that we can have a healthier, happier, safer Charlottesville. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have space now for 8 more speakers. If you would, okay, fantastic. This lady here, please. Will you come up, please, give your name and where you live.
Thank you. My name is Guinevere Higgins. I live on Elliott Avenue in Belmont. I'm speaking tonight in my role as Vice Chair of the city's Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I'm also speaking on behalf of BPAC's Chair, James Van Vranken, who couldn't be here tonight. The devastating and preventable death of Mamawa Samai last Thursday must be a wake-up call to our community. Nearly every pedestrian fatality is a policy failure, and we know in this tragic case that this is true. Ms. Samai was walking to work, crossing Elliott Avenue at South First Street in the crosswalk. While we don't yet have all the details, what we do know is that the city has defined this specific corridor as a neighborhood A street in the Streets That Work design guidelines. These guidelines provide design speeds for each neighborhood classification. The design speed for the stretch of Elliott Avenue, where Ms. Samai was killed, should be 25 miles per hour or less, according to the city's own standards. The city has guidance to design this street to 25 mile per hour speeds, but has left a 35 mile per hour zone in place. The city knows how to redesign this street to be safer, but it has effectively chosen not to do so through decades of inaction. Ms. Samai may very well be alive today, as Mr. Emery shared, if the city had chosen to implement its own design guidelines. The city's newly revised comprehensive plan calls for multimodal transit options to enhance safety for those who walk, bike, and roll while reducing climate emissions. But we have not yet identified the funding and staffing required to ensure that the vision in that plan can be implemented. Right now, alongside the Streets That Work guidelines, it's another plan on the shelf. The good news is that we have city staff who understand these challenges and have solutions for fixing them. We already have the design standards in place and the key locations identified to enhance safety all over the city. We have more bikers and walkers than ever, thanks to the popularity of e-bikes and expanded walk zones for our public schools. What we need to do now is to choose to prioritize safety and accessibility and be willing to make the investments required to correct decades of disinvestment. We must be unafraid to take some knocks from those who would prioritize speedy car travel over the safety of public school kids, elders walking to work, and those who use mobility devices. We will walk or bike with any of you at any time so that you may understand the drastic need for these improvements. We can choose to ensure that everyone on our streets is safe from traffic violence. We can choose to implement the plans that are ready to come off the shelf. We can choose to direct meaningful funding to safety and accessibility. Or we can choose to see more fatalities. If Mamawa Samai's death won't move us to act, what will? Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Long.
Good evening. I'm, excuse me. I'm here as an individual. I live in the city as a public health nurse concerned with public health, and I am reading a statement on behalf of Livable Seaville.
And would you give us your name, please?
Oh, Catherine Lawn. So we were saddened to hear of the death of Mamawa Sumai on Thursday. Another pedestrian fatality in Charlottesville is not acceptable. The stretch of roadway where she was killed on Elliott Avenue is designed to move cars quickly, not to keep pedestrians, cyclists, or people with mobility devices safe. It's vital to our community that people should be able to safely walk and roll to work, school, or anywhere they may seek to travel without a car. Addressing these safety concerns is a matter of equity. National statistics show that Black and Latino pedestrians are at disproportionately higher risk of death and injuries than their white counterparts. Furthermore, a 2022 analysis of national data demonstrated that this inequity remains even when holding the number of miles traveled constant. This likely reflects long-time underinvestment in infrastructure in historically Black and brown neighborhoods, underscoring the needs for council's urgent action. As we consider what comes next, we have a number of requests of the city. First, we ask for quick improvements to this intersection and stretch of road. Bump outs to narrow the crossing distance, a raised crosswalk to improve visibility and slow down traffic, improve lighting and signalization at the crosswalk. Adding protected bike lanes on Elliott between Ridge and 2nd Street will also help slow down cars by narrowing the width of car lanes. This can be done easily on this stretch given the wide right-of-way and lack of on-street parking. As the South 1st Street development project wraps up, there will be even more people crossing at this intersection. Second, we ask that quick solutions to ensure city staffing is adequate. We ask that there be quick solutions to ensure that city staffing is adequate. We understand that city leadership is philosophically supportive, but project completion is lagging due to the lack of a traffic engineer. We ask that you look to contract outside engineering work to ensure improvements at this intersection and other areas can happen as quickly as possible. Third, we ask for the FY26 budget to reflect urgency in improving pedestrian, bike, and ADA infrastructure. This means adequate funding for projects and the staffing to ensure that these projects happen in a timely manner. Charlottesville is not formally committed to Vision Zero, a national program helping communities achieve zero pedestrian fatalities, but we should be striving to ensure that traffic deaths and injuries do not happen here. We appreciate the work that has been going into this area and look forward to supporting future efforts.
Thank you so much. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Mario Maretta.
Okay.
I'm living in 500 South 1st Street, Crescent Hall. I was last month talked to the same meeting, but the lady who was in charge, she didn't let me talk. She told me she's gonna come back to me, but she didn't. and my life is in danger by neighbor using crystal meth, fentanyl, and the other substance.
Okay.
And I apologize, I am not good speaker, but I am in medical field. I reported to the chief of police and the other police. I appreciate them because they put their life in jeopardy because of us. Excellent policemen here. One of them is Officer William, Officer Witten, and Lieutenant Best. She is the best officer. But my life is in danger because the neighbor gentleman, his name Junior, he threatened my life. And he came, I don't sleep in my apartment because 7 times I was hospitalized. All the doctors here, they wrote the report. And I reported to all those police. Officer William told me go to magistrate. I went to magistrate, told me go bring the police report and their last name. I reported to all the police, but they didn't help me. I am here. Mr. Sanders was there. I talked to all of them, and anyhow, there is a gentleman. He knows I don't sleep in my apartment. He comes sometimes. I go there, just take shower, put the key, try to break the door and come in. He slashed my tire, and I saw him with the butcher knife. He came, so I ran away. He wanted to kill me. Okay. And please help me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Chief, is this something you could, and then if Ms. Marshall could also connect, please. Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name's Clifford Michael Hall. I reside at 112 West Market Street, Charlottesville, Virginia. And I'm here to speak on a topic of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. More specifically, John Stuart Mills begged the question in his book on liberty. He asked the question, is one's liberty absolute? And he wrote a book about 150 pages answering that question. To make a story short, most people's liberty is not absolute. Varying factors play a role. Now, more specifically, the preamble of the United States writes, amongst these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. When laws are guarded too tight, man becomes a sinkhole. That's a quote. An Ibid. Well, when organizations do the same things and legalize it through legal talk to justify their actions, Ms. Ribel, Shannon Elizabeth, you do not have one iota the right to control, manipulate one's liberty. More specifically, under Amendment 1, Article 1.1, which has become known as freedom of expression, Ms. Ribel, you have no right to manipulate one's sexuality. Regardless, Shannon, you've been called out in public on TV.
I'm sorry, it's not acceptable to attack people. If you.
Far from an attack.
Okay.
More of a defense. And that being said, I choose. Sorry, we're not married. Move on. Thank you.
Who's next? Sure? Okay. No, just one time is enough.
Mo's hand is up.
Come on up. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Mo Van de Sompel. I live at 608 Cabell Avenue. I think your fundamental problem here is just that your laws are out of date, specifically the speed limits are out of date, right? Speed is not necessarily the enemy. The enemy is momentum. Momentum is what causes deaths and crashes. And the problem is that American cars have been getting heavier and heavier and heavier for the last 30 years or so. The thing that I saw most recently says that they're up by about 33% since 2000. We have not done a massive systematic review of all of the speed limits throughout the city since 2000, and yet the danger of the average car posed not just to pedestrians and bikers, but indeed to other cars, has increased massively over that time. If I was in charge, I would probably just put like an automatic percentage decline across every street in Charlottesville, but that's not a very feasible thing. So the first thing is just at a very simple level, the speed limits need to come down because the cars have gotten heavier. There's no two ways about it. Now, one of the problems is that cars don't follow speed limits. They follow the vibe of what the road seems like the speed limit should be. Now, one way that you can fix that is issuing more traffic citations, and I don't think that I was ever going to be the person that says I want more traffic citations, but I think I do. I think I want more traffic citations because people are speeding constantly and we just need more enforcement. I don't think I've seen a cop pull somebody over in like the main roads of Charlottesville ever, honestly. I don't know if I've ever seen it, which is not for a lack of people breaking traffic laws in Charlottesville constantly. I don't know if the officers are busy doing something else, but I would love to see more traffic control. Then secondly, because they will not follow traffic laws just on their own regards, you need to start changing the vibe of the streets, and that includes all of the things that Livable Seville has already talked about. But yeah, I think your problem at a very base level is just that all of your laws are out of date because they were written thinking about cars that don't exist anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we will close community matters. There will be another opportunity for public comment at the end of the meeting. With respect to the consent agenda, Ms. Thomas, could you please read the consent agenda?
Number 3, minutes, May 20th regular meeting, September 16th regular meeting, September 17th joint city council and board of supervisors meeting. Number 4, resolution to appropriate insurance claim and reimbursement for the Avon Fuel Station Replacement Project, $65,000, second reading. 5, resolution to appropriate Victim Witness Assistance Program grant funds, $257,024, second reading. 6, resolution to appropriate State Historic Resources grant funds to the Jefferson School African American Heritage Center, $500,000, second reading. 7, ordinance to adopt a fire safety code fee schedule, second reading. 8, resolution to appropriate Virginia State Police HEAT FY25 equipment reimbursement funding, $12,500, one of 2 readings. 9, resolution for a special exception permit at 113 West Main Street. 10, resolution for golf maintenance equipment replacement. 11, resolution appropriating funds for the Carlton Mobile Home Park, $379,000, and this should have been one of 2 readings.
Got it. Thank you so much, Ms. Thomas. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
I'll move to adopt the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further questions or comments from council? Okay, please cast your vote. 4-0, the motion passes. Mr. Sanders, is there a report from the city manager's office?
Yes, sir. Before I turn it over to Deputy Freeze, I also would like to take a moment to acknowledge the unfortunate tragedy that occurred last week. As has also been mentioned this evening, there are multiple issues that contributed to the loss of Ms. Samai, and I submit that we can do better. I've asked Deputy Freeze to highlight some of the city's ongoing efforts to prioritize bike and pedestrian safety throughout the city, and I remain committed to getting our systems right so we can deliver on keeping our community safe, whether by foot, by bike, or by car. So, Mr. Freeze, if you would go through the items that you have.
Yep, thank you. James Freeze, Deputy City Manager for Operations. Good evening, Council. So first, I just would like to start by echoing the comments from Sam and City Council, the sentiments expressed. First thing, just immediately, I've asked our transportation team to come together and discuss measures that we can put into place more quickly to address the safety issues identified on this street and at that intersection. Second, I'm not going to go through the exhaustive list of everything we're doing. You all are well familiar with that. I think it's worth highlighting. Our sidewalk priority list is one of our ongoing efforts that we are seeking funding to support. I think it's also worth recognizing our Safe Routes to School program, which has received national recognition for the work that it's doing to go beyond education and outreach to really getting into infrastructure changes. As you guys know, we've focused a lot, both in the Safe Routes to School program and citywide, on quickly addressing safety concerns on our streets by doing quick build solutions, paint and plastic, that we can then follow along later with design that actually puts permanent concrete solutions into place. But again, funding is always part of that issue. The other thing I want to highlight is an ongoing project that's initiated right now and a future one that we have upcoming. The ongoing one is actually a regional project that we were instrumental, the city was instrumental in securing federal funding for, which is a project looking at identifying street safety issues regionally and identifying solutions for those. And that's the Move Safely Blue Ridge program. I encourage the public, I encourage council to go to the website movesafely.blueridge.com and get engaged with that project and make the voice of the city heard in the work that we need to do to improve safe streets. Second thing I want to highlight is a project that we have been preparing for a little while now, which is to actually do a study of the citywide speed limits, compare those in relation to our streets that work plan and the designated design speeds for those streets, and then propose back to council speed limit adjustments citywide. So just some of the work that we're engaged in. As you guys know, we have a fantastic team of people who are working on these issues of bike and pedestrian safety, on improving our transit system, and overall looking at our transportation system to be safe and efficient. So thank you.
Is it the case that we're missing a traffic engineer right now?
It is true. Because we promoted our
Yeah.
traffic engineer, and so that position is vacant. We are actively recruiting to fill that position.
Got it. Well, the gentleman's point about momentum being the killer, not speed necessarily, is true. And the weights of vehicles have gone up dramatically. So if you proportion it down relative, then you'd still have the same momentum. So anyway.
I would also add just that I've already been working on the remaining balance of the schedule for council work sessions to ensure that there's opportunity for more discussions about our VDOT portfolio. It's our transportation program funded by the state and other resources that we can get. There's an update that is scheduled to be presented to council and the public on November 4th. In addition, I have set up budget briefs as a part of the FY26 budget process. So on December 2nd, the budget brief is on housing and infrastructure. So we'll be splitting those two topics in that particular conversation for you all. And then I have separated a separate budget brief for public safety and transportation on December 16th. So we've been prioritizing getting additional time and attention paid to this. as we're working to develop this new budget. So there's a lot of more conversation for us to discuss about prioritizing. You've heard me say that often, that it comes down to where we want to prioritize because our list is a pretty long list. And I think what we're saying is that the team is ready to go whichever direction that we want to go in, but we're going to have to make choices, make some decisions about the choices that we have. So just wanted to express that that is where we are. The capital improvement program work will be discussed by the Planning Commission also in November and then finalized in December. And it just goes along with everything else that we're doing in that space. So we have not lost sight of the priority. One of the conversations that I've had upon taking this job is that we have a bunch of plans. We haven't prioritized all those plans. Sometimes the plans are in conflict with each other. A lot of the work, the more recent work, has been to put those plans away and take the lists that are within those and identify which ones are the priorities and get to work. And we have started doing that, and we will continue to do that. And so I just wanted to be able to express that that's where the focus is, and my commitment is to get it right.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. For the open position for traffic engineer, are we anticipating that we'll have that filled sooner than it would take to do an outside contracting service in the meantime, or what's the balance there?
So we've been actively trying to fill that position for a long time, and I can say that there's been a real struggle in filling it, both in terms of getting qualified applications as well as competing with others for that. So our focus to date has been on actually filling the position. I think we've opened a conversation within the last couple of weeks. We've had a conversation about, do we need to instead outsource this role, and we haven't reached a conclusion of that conversation at this point in time.
Okay, but it is being considered.
Yes.
It's yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? All good. Okay. If you get a chance to read the packet, there's a really detailed list of things that the city manager has put there, and all the work that the city is doing is well worth your reading. Okay, so now we're going to turn to the action items part of the meeting. Item number 12 on the agenda is a public hearing and ordinance establishing the Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy CPACE financing program. This is the first of two readings. Crystal Rotovar, will you introduce the item for public hearing, please?
Yes, good evening. Thank you. My name is Crystal Rittervold. I'm the director of our Office of Sustainability. I'm here before you this evening with a proposed ordinance to establish a commercial property assessed clean energy financing program to operate in coordination with Virginia's statewide CPACE program. And I'm joined this evening by Holly Ettinger. She's a program manager with the Virginia PACE Authority, and I'll describe who they are in just a moment. Next slide. Oh, do I have? I don't know if I have.
It may be on the other side.
I'm sorry. I picked the wrong podium here. Maybe. Okay, so just briefly, we'll talk about what CPACE is, what that looks like in Virginia and Charlottesville, some roles, responsibilities, next steps, and then our staff recommendation. And Holly and I are both available for any questions that you might have. So CPACE stands for Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy, and PACE programs create a financing mechanism for clean energy, energy efficiency, and other beneficial investments during new construction, renovations, and retrofits. CPACE is one type of PACE program, and it focuses on the commercial sector. In some other states, they have that same opportunity for the residential sector. CPACE is a clean energy and a climate resilience financing tool. And I will get this in the right order eventually. Maybe if I hold it in the right direction. So the Department of Energy has this definition: PACE programs allow a property owner to finance the upfront cost of energy and other eligible improvements on a property, and then pay the cost back over time through a voluntary assessment. And the unique characteristic is that the assessment is attached to the property rather than the individual. And again, I will explain a little bit more about that in a minute. Enabling CPACE in Charlottesville will accelerate improvements to new construction and existing buildings that reduce greenhouse gas emissions and enhance building resilience to climate change impacts. And it makes it easier for local businesses and commercial property owners to invest in energy efficiency, water conservation, clean energy, and resilience. So these improvements reduce greenhouse gas emissions, strengthen resilience to climate change, and it's in our FY25 Climate Action Work Plan. The program is designed to make the property improvements cost neutral so that the benefits match or outweigh the property assessment. And you see here a listing of eligible properties as they are found in the proposed ordinance. So it ranges from energy efficiency improvements, water efficiency and safe drinking water improvements, renewable energy, so solar, et cetera, resilience improvements, stormwater management improvements, environmental remediation improvements, and electrical vehicle infrastructure. Essentially, CPACE overcomes two common obstacles that property owners making clean energy and these types of improvements run into. Number one, the lack of upfront financial capital, and number two, the payback period between the upfront investment and when the improvement finishes paying for itself don't line up. So with a traditional loan, it may take 12 years for that investment to pay back, and yet the property owner may not own the property for that duration of time. So how does CPACE help? Number one, CPACE functions similar to a loan, providing upfront financial capital. And then number two, because the assessment, because the financial loan is essentially attached to the property rather than the individual, the property owners will realize the benefits of the improvements even if they sell the property before the investment's payback period. So as an example, if there's solar put on a building, the property owner will realize those reduced utility costs as soon as those projects are turned on. And then should that property be sold, the transfer of the loan will go to the next property owner who will continue to realize those utility savings, and then eventually the ROI on that investment will be realized. Additionally, because there's a relatively high security on the repayment structure, the program generally offers lower interest rates than a conventional loan, which also reduces the overall cost to the property owner. And that's the extent of the financial pieces that I'll share. Holly is here to answer many, many further details if you would like to go into those. CPACE has been enabled in Virginia since 2009, and actually Charlottesville was very interested in CPACE back at the time that we established LEAP, because this was another creative financing approach. There have been a number of modifications to that enabling legislation over the course of a decade, many of which have either addressed some of the dysfunctional components of the original program, really reinstated some of the guidelines, expanded some of the eligible projects. So up until about 2021, there were only 2 or so localities that adopted this, and these localities set up the programs on their own. They did all of the administration or hired the administrative component. In 2022, there was a very significant change by which Virginia launched a statewide CPACE program, and this is a program that localities can opt into. The major benefit here being we don't have to do that heavy lift of designing and administering the program outright. So to date, now we have 15 localities that have opted into this statewide program, including Albemarle County, which opted into the program in early 2023. And actually, Alexandria is now also in the process of opting into the statewide program. Virginia PACE Authority. So in Virginia, this statewide program is being administered by a 501c3 organization called the Virginia PACE Authority. They were selected by the Virginia Department of Energy to administer this program, and they facilitate all of the coordination between the lenders, so private capital, and the borrowers, the building owners, the property owners, the businesses. and they coordinate handling the payment process. Essentially, this statewide program lowers the barrier to entry for all of the parties involved. In Charlottesville, adopting CPACE and then standing up this program aligns with Council's strategic outcome area related to climate action. And very specifically in our 2023 Climate Action Plan, there's language to further enable the private financial sector investment in energy performance upgrades in commercial buildings, specifically through the adoption of a CPACE financing program. Very briefly, there is some one-time setup work, and I would say that we're at the tail end of that. The Commonwealth set up a statewide program. The next step is vetting that program with staff. We have a number of individuals who have been involved in internal and regional meetings, and I would say we've had these meetings, frankly, 2010, 2012, 2015, 2017, and then in 2023, or 2022, when the state set up the program, we re-met in 2023, and now finally in 2024, we've re-met and we're here before you. So now the ordinance is being presented. Our legal office has reviewed the template ordinance, has modified that to be Charlottesville size, has reviewed the related program agreement and locality agreement, and again, those are the appendices to the ordinance that's in front of you. In terms of roles and responsibilities within the city of Charlottesville, our office will administer the program and promote CPACE as a financing option. Upon review of an application packet, we will review that and then pass it on to the city manager to co-sign each specific financing agreement. And frankly, the staff time is anticipated to be less than 20 hours a week, but that's obviously dependent on uptake, and it is not expected that that will be a shock in the first few years. But we would like this to be transforming, not just in Charlottesville, but across the Commonwealth, another way of getting this clean energy and resilience work done. And then the Virginia PACE Authority, they also have roles for promoting the CPACE opportunities. They broker the agreement, and they manage the program participation and payment. Another quick overview of what that looks like. Promoting the project is done in partnership between the Virginia PACE Authority and our office. The Virginia PACE Authority, the property owner, and the financial institution are involved in negotiating the financing. The property owner, the financial institution, and the city manager sign the agreement. The financial institution is responsible for processing the loan payment, and then if necessary, the financial institution will also handle the enforcement. And so enforcement would be delinquency in payments. So what is next? Before you today, you have a proposed ordinance, and the action would involve amending the Charlottesville City Code by adding a new section to Chapter 30, which is your taxation chapter. Article 20 is the Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy Financing Program. And then along with that, you will have, it will authorize the city to execute an agreement between the state agency, Virginia Energy, and our locality that says we will follow the rules and the program guidelines of this statewide program, and then the model agreement that would be signed between a property owner, the lender, and the city of Charlottesville.
One quick question. So
Yes.
the item on the agenda tonight is amending.
So I believe, and I can defer to our attorneys who are, I believe is also on, I think Rob Hubbard may also be on, but the action is to amend city code to add this section to Chapter 30.
Yeah, but the two pieces of executing the Virginia, I guess those go along with the program when it's in place?
Yes, so, I'm sorry?
Attachments A and B.
Yeah, attachments A and B to
Just
your packet.
Go along or attach to, go along with the amendment? Is that the idea?
So the code will be a standalone piece, and those other two are then administrative pieces. One is executed as soon as the code is amended, so that we then the city opts into the statewide program, and the other agreement is then once a property owner wants to exercise, participate, get this type of financing, there's a standalone project-by-project agreement that is executed, and that is attachment A.
Okay. But the B and A are administrative?
They're
Okay,
they're
thank you.
administrative, and the other one is then part of code. And so at this point, I know we have a public hearing this evening, but it would be staff's recommendation that council adopt the local CPACE ordinance, allowing the city of Charlottesville to opt into the statewide program. And doing this is part of our climate action plan and an item in our FY25 work plan. And I know Holly and I are available if you have any questions.
And so just before we open it to the public, I want to summarize what I think you're saying so that it might be clear for everyone.
Do you want me to go back to a slide?
No.
Okay.
I think I've got it. Basically, it's a statewide program, and the city, by opting in, means that our residents have access to state money to have loans to do various improvements.
It actually is
Or,
limited.
sorry,
It's
financial institution
non-residential,
money.
so it's commercial, and it's not single-family residential. So it's commercial focused, and the funding comes from private capital. It's not a pool of money that the state has made available, but the state has created the program, like the mechanism by which property owners, financial institutions, and localities can come together to bring the dollars to those projects in this unique arrangement where this voluntary assessment is placed on the property and runs with the land rather than with the applicant.
Okay, great. Sorry, I meant local, not residents, but
Yes.
like Charlottesville
Yes.
people. Yes, got it.
And,
Okay.
and the other the advantage to participating in a statewide program is the program guidelines are the same across all localities that are doing this. So a developer or a property owner, they don't have to like figure out how do we do this in Charlottesville? How do we do this in Albemarle? How do we do this in
There's
Richmond?
consistency.
It's the same.
Yeah.
So that
And-
simplifies
And it
things.
doesn't cost the city money to
It
participate.
doesn't cost the city any money. And so all the costs associated with the financing are part of the project fees.
Great. Thank you.
So an additional way to look at this is it becomes a toolkit item for climate action.
It's a toolkit item for climate action.
We're
putting tools in the
identifying
toolkit.
opportunities for active development that leads to the promotion of climate action.
And the downside, if we didn't participate in this, it shuts off that avenue.
Right,
for
then property, businesses and property owners would have to rely on traditional financing
To make these
methods. And in some cases, these are harder or unique types of improvements that a standard loan might have higher interest rates. And I would defer if Holly has any other points that she wanted to make this evening, since she is here virtually, I think.
Yep, I'm here. Hi. You really covered it very well, and I've sat in on these presentations for many jurisdictions across the Commonwealth, and I think Crystal did a great job of giving you all a strong overview. And she mentioned the program guidelines, and I will tell you that that's about a 60-page document that outlines what type of improvements, what kind of energy saving property owner must achieve in order to access this special financing tool. So that's something we kind of coordinate with the state to keep in place, again, to Crystal's point, so it's consistent jurisdiction to jurisdiction. But happy to answer any questions, but if you have any.
The reason that this is going into the taxation, can you hear me? The reason this is amending the part of our code on taxation is that essentially this would become a lien against their property if they don't pay back what they're supposed to. Is that the idea? Yeah.
Because there is engagement of the treasurer in this
Well,
action.
the payments, yes. There is, it is, because it is tied to the parcel.
Right.
That is how it is referred to as a tax assessment.
Got it.
And it is collected as a payment.
Mhm.
That the payment happens outside of the tax bill. And Holly,
Okay.
correct me if I'm wrong, but that would be the mechanism to deal with a default or a delinquency. That becomes the tool by which the locality has a unique role to engage. But we wouldn't typically, it's not going to go there, that last box on that one slide.
Yeah.
And we have had conversations internally that it would be our preference and our opportunity to delegate that collection or that enforcement to the CPACE authority and the financial institution.
Okay.
So, just a few quick, because I'm not 100% sure I understand, but just to kind of summarize, would it be accurate that opting in allows private business owners of commercial properties to connect with private capital to basically get an upfront loan, and then they're able to pay off that loan with the cost savings that the energy efficiency upgrades provide.
Yeah,
So one
cor-
may hope.
and it doesn't always have to be energy efficiency. So as an example, you may put in a very, example, for a resilience project, it may be the cost of moving all of the mechanical equipment off of a basement or a lower level to a different level if it was in a flood-prone area. So that may not have a utility cost savings, but it's still a risk. It's minimizing risk to the property, and then that loan can be paid back over time.
Right. And then the only impact for the city as an organization is about 20 hours a year of staff time, not a fiscal investment or responsibility. And then the final question I have is, you touched on a little bit just now, but like in the worst case scenario where there's a business who got that loan and they went out of business or declared bankruptcy, is what would happen, the statewide CPACE authority would then basically seize the commercial property?
So Holly, I'm going to let you answer that one.
Yeah, I'll answer that one. So in your resolution, what would happen is the lending institution would follow the same process and have the same rights that the jurisdiction has, but they would do the work. And the Virginia PACE Authority would help coordinate that. So if a property goes delinquent, we would be notified by the lender and we would notify you. However, those actions will be taken by the lending institution. And in many cases, what may end up happening is the CPACE loan amount may sit alongside the taxes as unpaid until the property finds a new owner. And at that point, your taxes get made whole and the CPACE assessment gets brought up to date. The key thing with these is they don't accelerate. So only what is due or what is past due would be payable at the time of a property transfer, not the full amount. So, it kind of follows the same process as a delinquent tax. However, the actual actions will be done by the lending institution.
Does that answer your question?
I think I understand. So it would be, in that worst case scenario, the business goes out of business. When someone else buys that property, it would basically get baked into the cost of acquisition, paying off that unpaid amount. And are there any enforcement actions that would be taken against that business owner who went delinquent?
I think that's outside of the PACE loan. I mean, the city is not going to go after the business that went bankrupt. I think that's between the financial institutions and the CPACE authority.
Right. So it would be the private lender taking action to enforce it. So, okay, yeah. I'm just trying to understand.
And most likely their mortgage lender would get involved way before.
Yeah. And frankly, before the statewide program was an option, it was all those hypothetical scenarios that really prevented us from saying, like, we should build this ourselves here. It's just too complicated and would have required added staff time to be able to pull it off or contract out administration. And now it is contracted out by the state, and we just hook our wagon to that program.
Thank you.
And so I think there's a public hearing now.
Yeah, are there any other questions before we open the public hearing? Okay, I will now open the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this item? Okay, with no speakers, the public hearing is now closed. Council, is there any further discussion?
I guess to me it seems reasonable. I mean, the risk for any business is the same as if they went out and accessed, private capital. So that's just part of their decision making. To me, it would make sense to move to a consent agenda.
Ms. Thomas, given the fact that this is a public hearing, the second reading, does it have to be in the action items, or can it be on the consent agenda?
It can go to consent.
Okay. Is everyone good with that?
Yeah.
Good with you? Okay, let's do that. So we will carry this item to October 21st, second reading, and thank you, Ms. Rudolph, for all of your efforts on this.
Thank you.
Okay, take care. Okay, we're at item 13, public hearing and ordinance for 240 Stribling Avenue planned unit development. Proffer amendment. Mr. Matthew Alfell will introduce the item for public hearing.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Vice Mayor, City Council, Matt Alfley, City Planner, Neighborhood Development Services. Tonight, you'll be holding a public hearing on a proposed proffer amendment for the residential development at 240 Stribling Avenue. Southern Development, on behalf of the landowner, Belmont Station LLC, has submitted an application to amend the approved proffer statement, which was originally approved by City Council on April 18th, 2022, for the 240 Stribling Avenue Plan Unit Development. The request is to amend the proffer statement to allow a portion of the required affordable dwelling units to be built within the Flint Hill PUD development, which is currently already under construction. The proposed amendment would also lower the required affordability to 50% area median income from the current 60% AMI for a minimum of 2 of the required affordable dwelling units. If this request is approved, up to 8 of the required 26 affordable dwelling units for the 240 Stribling Avenue could be built within the Flint Hill PUD development. The remaining 18 required affordable dwelling units will still be built within the 240 Stribling Avenue development once it's approved and under construction. This will conclude staff's presentation. I'll answer questions. The applicant's here. There's not a presentation from the applicant, but Charlie Armstrong with Southern Development is here to answer questions. And
Mr. Armstrong, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Thank you. I'm Charlie Armstrong with Southern Development. The purpose of this is we have an opportunity to take care of some of our obligations at the Stribling Avenue PUD sooner and with deeper affordability than they would be if they're at the Stribling PUD. Flint Hill is really just down the road from the Stribling Avenue property, also in Fry Springs, kind of on the other edge of it. And it is under construction now, and Stribling PUD is still in the approval processes. So it is a good year or two, I would say, behind Flint Hill. And so our hope is to accomplish some of our obligations sooner, and I think it's a benefit for the community as well to get those affordable units on the market sooner. And that's really all I have, but happy to answer any questions that you all have.
Thank you so much. Are there any clarifying questions from council?
Yeah. How many units are there at Flint Hill?
Total, there will be 53 planned units there.
And is this proposal that you build more units at Flint Hill, or simply that more of them would be affordable?
Just that more of them would be affordable.
I mean, my initial inclination is to think that in terms of access to the outside world and so on, access from Flint Hill is going to be easier for people who are living there than people living at Stribling, at least for the foreseeable future.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?
And just to summarize it, to make sure I understand, and also for the public as well, so Stribling Avenue obviously was a PUD approved a number of years ago, and it was 15% of those units that were pledged to be affordable as part of that approval, right?
That's right.
And what you've done is that's 26 units total, and you're requesting that 8 of them just get shifted to 8 new affordable units at Flint Hill, with the AMI of 2 of those 8 going from 60% AMI to 50% AMI, and then 10.5% is still affordable at Flint Hill at 60% area median income, but the total number of affordable units that you've pledged hasn't changed at all, it's just shifted location.
Right.
Okay.
Excellent, thank you. Natalie, anything?
In our packet, when it says the motion passed 6-0 to recommend approval, that's from Planning Commission?
Yes.
Great. Nothing for me.
Okay, thank you. I will now open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on this item?
I think I wasn't here to speak on this item, but I think there needs to be some more questions asked about why the shift. Maybe you all have already asked that. This is one of the projects that we voted on when I was on council, so I think it needs to be a little deeper here about why the shift to in developments, and then what is gained on the city's end in the affordable housing era from approving this. I did not look at this because I was here specifically for the Kindlewood, but I'm sure once I get home and look at my notes, I would have a lot more questions. But I don't think you all are asking enough questions based on what I'm remembering right off.
Anyone else who'd like to speak? Okay, thank you. With no additional speakers, the public hearing is now closed. Council, is there any discussion?
I do have one more question. Just in the little recap, it says that Planning Commission wanted to know if the units would be different in size or appearance, given, or depending on which development the units were placed in. I know that Stribling is going to have a different style than Flint Hill, but are the units in Flint Hill going to be different than the other units in Flint Hill? The units that are now going to be deemed more affordable, how are they going to be distinct, if at all, from the remainder of the units at Flint Hill?
I think I know your question. So summarizing the development plans for Flint Hill and for Stribling, Flint Hill is a total of 53 units. It's a mix of townhomes and condominiums. All for sale is the plan. Stribling is a mix of townhomes and either condominiums or apartments. It's a multifamily, a couple of multifamily buildings in that site, and the remainder townhomes. We don't yet know what the mix at Stribling will work out to be. We haven't fully resolved that as far as where and when the affordable units would be. There are proffers governing it that we have to follow. But at Flint Hill, these would be for sale condominiums would be the plan if they move from Stribling to Flint Hill.
Yes, but if I were to tour Flint Hill, would I be able to tell a difference between one of the market rate units and one of the affordable units?
Yeah, probably, because the plan for the affordable units in Flint Hill is that they would be in those condominiums. They're going to be designed as townhouse condos. I don't yet know the architecture. We are planning to partner with Habitat for Humanity at Flint Hill. They've done what I think will be similar buildings to these at Southwood recently, and they just look like townhomes. I don't know that they're going to do exactly the same architecture here. I don't know why they would do something different. That's a question I could ask them, but we will be building the townhomes that are not condominiums. They'll be fee simple townhomes. So I guess if you're examining architecture, you might be able to tell the difference. But in other places we've worked with Habitat side by side, like Burnett Commons, you probably can't tell the difference between ours and theirs. So I can't give you a guarantee whether you will be able to see it or not.
Right. But it's not going to be like there's an
quality.
appreciable downgrade in materials?
No, between the two projects, no.
Between the market rate and the affordable?
No,
units.
Habitat builds with hardy plank and high-end finishes, I think inside and out. It's been my experience with them.
And it's not a bad question at all. How did this come up in the development process?
That's the same question the Planning Commission asked, and a reasonable one. We have obligations in both communities to include affordable housing in our plans. That was part of the approval process. That's part of from the start with both of those projects. It's always been part of the plan. But to be able to accomplish some of it from Stribling sooner now makes things more flexible for us in the future. It's kind of one of those things, if we have an obligation we can take care of now, why not take care of it now? Seeing benefits for us getting it finished, and then benefits to the city and the community of getting those units sooner, getting those homes for people sooner. It seemed like a pretty easy win-win.
Okay, thanks. I do appreciate the fact that this will have more units online sooner. That, I mean, the speed of construction is always going to be a necessary hindrance in getting what we want. You know, things just take time because building takes time. So having these units available for folks at that AMI before, waiting on Stribling, I think that is a appreciable benefit.
Mr. Armstrong, I think you just said this, but if you could help me. The units that will be at Flint are going to be for purchase.
Right.
Okay. And the units that you were going to build at Stribling, the same number would have been for purchase.
There are some of each at Stribling. So this is substituting for sale units at Stribling for sale units
Got it.
at Flint
Okay,
Hill.
so it's apples to apples. Okay.
And then with the caveat that I'm sure the exact dates would not be known, but kind of ballpark, if they were shifted to Flint Hill, when would these units come online as units that someone could purchase? And then at Stribling, what would be kind of the ballpark of when the first units would get built?
Yeah, I don't have exact dates for either of those construction timeframes, but I think it's easy to say pretty accurately that it's at least a year or two sooner at Flint Hill than it would be at Stribling. Stribling, we're very close, I think, to getting the site plan approved, but have not yet started site work. There's a lot of work yet to do on a pretty big site, 11 acres in the city, to get ready to actually build homes. At Flint Hill, the site work is well underway, and we expect we'll be starting homes. I don't know exactly when Habitat will start. We expect we'll be starting some homes and ready for them to start if they want by January.
And when you say site work, you mean like grading and foundation
Grading, building
type
roads,
stuff?
water, sewer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, January, February, if things go well, if we don't get more hurricanes.
So Habitat is going to be doing the affordable units at Flint Hill?
Yes, they'll definitely be doing 8 units there. We want them to be able to do 16.
And so you're expecting that if this gets approved, that Habitat would do the additional units that would come over. It might help them with their efficiency if they were doing 16 rather than 8.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable to assume.
Okay, is there agreement to carry this item to the October 21st meeting for a second reading and
Well,
vote?
before we go to that, I think it's probably fair to see whether we have any kind of an answer to Ms. Walker's question. Mr. Alfaley, do you have a sense of what the city gains by this?
Council, if, there's kind of a big if in front of it. The city would gain these 8 additional units reaching market sooner. Do keep in mind, this is amending the proffer. So again, we're speaking proffer language. There's no conditions we can place on this. This is, the applicant has an approved proffer statement. They requested a change to that approved proffer statement, and that change would give them the ability, if they chose, to move those units from Stribling to Flint Hill. They don't have to. If something came up on their end, they could keep all the units at Stribling. But it would gain what the city would gain would be 2 units at a lower AMI. There's the real possibility, I don't think Charlie intends not to build them at Flint Hill, but he has the choice not to. But by amending it, there would be 2 of the units that has to be provided would have a lower AMI.
Is there any sort of, cost may be the overstating the principle, but is there any downside from the city's perspective to doing this?
There's not a downside The downside was kind of when we went through this originally, these units are most likely going to be in the multifamily condo sections. When these original application came through, staff had a concern, reiterated it in our staff report that we would like to have seen these spread throughout the development. So maybe you have a townhome, one of the units in the condo, something a little more spread out. We understand some of the realities of when you're building, and especially partnering with someone like Habitat, that's not necessarily as feasible, but that's the only drawback we saw, was we would like to have seen these spread out more through each development.
Okay.
I think the other, there may not be a known answer on this, but the previous agreement was 26 units at 60% of area median income. Now it would still be 26 units, 2 of them at 50% area median income. So for 2 units, the AMI is brought down lower, and there's the argument that for 8 of the units, they would be available about 1 to 2 years earlier. But the amount of units is the same. The other thing I'm curious about, I think Habitat's average AMI for a family that moves into unit is 20% of area median income. So for these 8 units, if Habitat is the partner, do you know if they would be going significantly lower than 50% area median income?
So you're right, and that's how we arrived at the 2 units at 50%. I asked Habitat if we were to do these with them, how low could they go? Basically, how low could I guarantee to you all? And they were hesitant to guarantee anything more than the 2 units at 50% and the others at 60, because they do have residents that are on their list who are not in that low of a income range, and they'd like to be able to serve them too. However, and it depends on other grants and whatever things they have going on. Their average is definitely, I don't know if it's 20, but I've heard the number 30% AMI is closer to their overall average of who they serve. So yes, I expect it will be significantly lower than 60 or 50 on average, but they're just not quite ready to promise that.
Right, so it could be, but the only absolute guarantee is 2 at 50, previous agreement. Still would have been 26, but they all would have been at 60 AMI. Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm good.
Okay. So do we agree to take this to October 21st consent agenda? Good with that?
I'm good with that.
Michael? Okay.
Thank you.
We'll vote on it then. All right, item 14, ordinance amending city code section 2-453B3-4 for police civilian oversight board composition, 1 of 2 readings.
Good evening, Vice Mayor, Council, Ms. Thomas, Mr. Sanders. My name is Eden Ratliff. I'm the Deputy City Manager for Administration, and I have the distinct responsibility to present to Council its desire to amend city code related to the PCOB ordinance. There is a council memo as well as a draft proposed changes to the ordinance included in the packet. I think the request by council tonight is relatively simple, and that is to expand participation on the PCOB, specifically eligibility for participation. Tonight is the first of 2 potential readings if the council desires to continue it that way. I am going to read a pertinent section here in section 2-453 subsection B4. Well, I'll read 3 and 4. So I'm going to read 3 and then I'll note the language that is proposed to be stricken. 3 says, the non-voting member of the board shall be an individual with policing expertise or experience. The non-voting member may be a retired law enforcement officer who, prior to his or her retirement, was employed in a locality similar to the city of Charlottesville. The proposed language to be struck says the non-voting member need not be a resident of the city of Charlottesville. So that just says that this non-voting person could live elsewhere if desired. Subsection 4. The 7 voting members of the board shall be residents of, and this is proposed language, or shall be employed in, and then continuing language, in the city of Charlottesville, and here is kind of the substantive change that's being proposed, or Albemarle County, with priority given to city residents and those with significant and demonstrable ties to the city. The rest of what I'm going to read is currently in the ordinance and is proposed to be removed. It goes on to say that, except that if council has appointed someone who represents an organization that seeks racial or social justice on behalf of historically disadvantaged communities, that person shall either be a resident of the city of Charlottesville or the organization they represent shall perform advocacy on behalf of the city of Charlottesville residents. So I just said a lot. If we back up and zoom out as to summarize what I just said, we're essentially, the proposal here is to amend city code for the PCOB ordinance to allow folks who live in Albemarle County or work in Albemarle County to serve on the PCOB. And this is important because the city has been challenged in getting members of our at-large community to participate in the PCOB, which is a critically important office of the city that provides essential functions. We want this to thrive, and we need folks who are willing to serve, and we need to be able to fill the vacancies that we've had, and we've had some vacancies that have been longstanding. So again, this is not an advocated position from the city staff. This is a request from the council, and I'm here to present on that and hopefully answer any questions that you might have. Again, this doesn't need to be a settled matter tonight. It is proposed for 2 readings, so we can be back in action again if it's the desire of the city council in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Any questions?
By removing the last sentence of number 3, does that mean that the person has to now live in Charlottesville, or they could be from anywhere at all?
That's a good question. It just says that they have to be a retired law enforcement officer who has experience in localities similar to Charlottesville, but they're not required to live within the city in order to serve that function of the board.
So if someone was obviously their application would still have to get approved by Charlottesville City Council.
Yeah.
But like if someone lived in Omaha and they wanted to apply and tune in remotely, or fly here, would that potentially?
I think that would be up to the discretion of council at the time, but it sounds like that they would meet the reading.
They
of
would
this
meet the
ordinance.
requirements, and then council would have to decide.
Yeah,
whether or
and
not
council may look at that application and find other challenges with it, that you could consider, but technically it would meet the 4 letters.
Okay.
Well, I would just want to acknowledge, we did receive comments from members of the Police Civilian Oversight Board. Obviously, this is one of 2 readings. And was it Thursday you planned to discuss this, or did I misread?
Yeah, this has been moved on and off agendas a couple times internally, and I saw some of those comments come through as well, but this did get added here at the last second. Not the last second, but did get added at the end of last week.
Would it be
noting that it'd be the start of a discussion, not the end?
Yeah, would it be acceptable just to have the chair just be able to confirm you're going to discuss it on Thursday?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, either myself or someone from the city staff, to engage the PCOB at their next meeting, which is on Thursday the 10th, to participate in that discussion and receive feedback. I think that's a perfectly acceptable idea.
Yeah, because it sounds like I think there's just an opportunity to, between now and next meeting, align on a consensus between what's in here and the recommendations from the PCOB, which I thought seemed reasonable to me. I mean, specifically for the non-voting member, it probably makes sense to just clarify they could only live in Charlottesville and Albemarle. I doubt we would appoint someone from anywhere in the country, but it helps to make sure that's not possible. And I do think it would be, like for example, the Human Rights Commission, we can appoint people who are both city residents or non-city residents. So this would be a change similarly allowing it to be more like the Human Rights Commission. And my initial idea was I wonder if it makes sense for, if you're going to expand it outside city residents, if you make it so it's not just a priority given to city residents, you would only look outside the city if you received no qualified applicants who are city residents, just to have, because I do think it makes sense as much as is feasible, prioritize city residents, recognizing sometimes it may be possible. So those are my only thoughts, and I do know between now and our next meeting, the PCOB will be discussing it, and I think we all are open to incorporating any feedback.
Yeah, for sure. If we, I guess, drastically change the language between now and then, I guess we might have to kick it off for another.
Yeah, we'd probably have to do another first and
reading.
second reading, which is perfectly fine if that's pleasing to council. I think it might be helpful for the PCOB members who are present tonight, and also for us to convey to those who aren't on Thursday, what the stated objectives are of the council. As I kind of said earlier, this is the council's priority, not a staff-driven perspective. So just to be able to make sure that that's a part of the conversation, they might benefit from hearing your
And I'll,
perspective.
and I can just say, I mean, I think the motivation is the fact that there have been periods for months and months where we have received no applicants who qualify for board positions on the Police Civilian Oversight Board. So there have been times where that has meant the PCOB is unable to have a quorum or simply doesn't have board capacity to do a lot of functional work. So the goal is to just have a board that is fully functional and as powerful as possible. So that was the motivation.
Yep.
And I want to make a note of one thing. When we talked about the law enforcement representative would be somebody from Charlottesville or Albemarle. In fact, our present law enforcement representative lives in Fluvanna County. So I mean, if we were to make that change and we didn't make any change to the standards for the community representative, we would be down to we'd be down to 5 of 7 possible members of the board and no law enforcement rep as the non-voting member. So we're running into real difficulties getting people to apply for this.
Yep.
And I'll only add, I know this is, as was mentioned earlier in the 4 p.m. session, this is underway, although not, probably soon to happen. But obviously this dovetails with the fact that, across all our boards and commissions, we need to figure out how to provide childcare, meals, time them, so more people apply in addition to recruiting people to apply. From my understanding, we do know the Police Civilian Oversight Board is one of our boards which is clearly defined under state law. Board members cannot receive compensation, but we still could try to figure out these other things, but it just dovetails with that conversation, obviously.
Yeah, Councilor Payne, I completely agree with you. And allowing individuals who may reside or work in the county to serve on city boards and commissions is not without precedent. There are certainly other examples within the city where we allow that. But to your latter point, public service at times is a burden. It's really challenging. The roles of these boards and commissions is significantly important to our operations and the services that the city provides, but it's not without challenges on those who volunteer, and we greatly appreciate the work that they do. And I think, as you stated, the spirit and intent here is just to make sure that enough individuals are serving so that if there's a call to action, they can meet, they can have a quorum, and they can move forward and do that good work.
Yep. Okay, so we will move this to next meeting's action items.
Is there any desire of the city council to take action tonight after the first reading, or do we want to wait for feedback?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Is this a matter of deferral, and therefore you have time to hear from the PCOB after their meeting?
I feel like this has been out there for a long time.
I think we should not take definite action tonight. I mean, look, if folks want to be heard.
Sure. So is the notion that we'll just come back to this a week from now and sort of reset the clock in terms of?
I think the issue is that you have the item before you today. If the PCOB meets on Thursday and their recommendations would cause you to make material changes, it's a new item.
So we just set it aside for now is the notion.
And
I'm fine with that because we're basically just cut and paste, copy
Why
and
not
paste.
go ahead and have it be the second reading, but if we're not ready to move forward, we're going to make some changes, we can make some changes.
That was my suggestion. Would it make sense process, move it to the action items next meeting as a second reading, and then council indicates to you all staff if from that Thursday PCOB meeting there's changes we want, we convey that to you all.
Right.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And the reason I think that's a great idea is it allows things to keep moving, but if there's feedback that materially changes what the council's desire is, we can always step back. But if not, if everyone's kind of on the same page, then we get to keep moving, noting that there are vacancies on the PCOB now.
Okay, fantastic. I think we're in agreement.
And if anyone watching has just learned of the fact that there's vacancies on the PCOB and they're interested in filling out an application, please feel free to do so.
So, Ms. Thomas, is there a vote required? No, okay.
So will the October 21st meeting include the PCOB presenting their recommendations, or will that still be staff?
I think it'd be staff.
It'll be you?
Happy to do it.
Okay.
So
I'm sure we would be happy to hear from them as well.
So we don't have to vote on it tonight. We'll vote on it the second.
If you
Second
wish.
reading.
At that time,
Yeah.
you may make another decision.
Do we still have to
I
public
would just,
hearing?
I would state that the matter would need to be resolved by the PCOB in the form of whatever recommendations for consideration for the preparation of the next packet, so that if a change needed to be made, that would have been solidified at the time of finalizing the packet to be published to the public ahead of the 21st meeting. So I know they're meeting on Thursday. We can meet that timeline based on the head nods I see. So I just want to point that out, that that's ultimately the deadline we're working towards, is the process that we currently follow for finalizing a packet ahead of a meeting.
That's not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday.
But the next one, that's correct.
So
Yeah, okay.
9 days.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep. All right. Item 15, resolution for permanent and affordable housing acquisition by the Charlottesville Redevelopment and Housing Authority at 212 Fifth Street, 217 Fifth Street Southwest, and 407 Harris Road. Mr. Alex Ikafuna will present.
Good evening, Vice Chair, members of the City Council, City Manager. Tonight, staff is bringing before you a request by CRHA to acquire 212 and 217 Fifth Street and 407 Harris Road with unspent fund from the Supplemental Rental Assistance Program for the fiscal year 2023 and 24. And the total cost of the property acquisition is $2.675 million. And of this, the Federation of Appalachian Housing Enterprises is financing $2.2 million of that cost, and the remaining balance, $475,000, CRHA is seeking approval from the City Council to use the unspent C-STRAP fund to leverage the gap in the financing of the project. And the request complies with the City Council strategic plan framework areas of housing and partnership, and also the affordable housing plan and the comprehensive plan. Staff recommendation is approval. And secondly, Mr. Sales, the Executive Director of Housing Authority, is here, just in case the City Council has questions for him.
Confirm the amount from the SISRAP account that we're proposing.
$234,000. CRHA will be providing the rest of the funding, which is $241,000.
Okay, any questions?
I wanted to, a couple things. First of all, this is the same set of properties that was discussed on the, was it the September 23rd meeting of CRHA's board? Is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
And Mr. Sales, I just want to say, I sent you a long email and you got right back to me with paragraph by paragraph response. And I just wanted to thank you for your attention to that, because I know it couldn't, I'm sure you had something better to do at 9 o'clock that morning.
I'm working on it that night.
Anyway, I thought it was very helpful, and I really do appreciate all those answers. And I know I mentioned it to Mr. Payne and told him he should say nice things to you the next time. I don't know whether he did, but anyway.
Him and Wes.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. I had not known until all of this about the organization. Is it just pronounced Fahy? Fahy. And how they're, you know, what I learned about them, they're providing a lot of this money, I gather, is primarily they're working in Appalachia, but somehow or another Charlottesville and Albemarle fit into their category as well, and so we're getting the benefit of some of their assistance.
They're expanding their service footprint.
Yeah, cool. Anyway.
Okay, are we ready to?
I would just have one question for Mr. Sales. For these properties, is there anything that's just a written guarantee that all the units would be paired with vouchers as the affordability mechanism?
Yeah, so we don't have a written guarantee. we've committed to doing that. That's what we've done with all the other properties as well. So we work well with our own office in the voucher program and also the county's office for the voucher program to let them know when we have units available. And so we've been really successful with leasing them up. There's a lot of vouchers. We have about 40% of our vouchers that come back because they're unable to be leased up, and the county is around the same.
So the plan, if these units were acquired, would be to pair every unit with a voucher?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Someone care to move this for approval?
Well, okay, I'll move approval of the resolution. I don't have it in front of me, but I've read it and
Okay.
we all have it, so it's fine.
Yep. Is there a second?
Second?
Okay, please cast your vote. All right, the motion passes 4-0. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, so item 16 is a acknowledgement that we have received a written report from Bennett's Village 2024. Are there any questions from council about the report?
No, I would just highlight for the community in the report that they've raised $320,000 and $180,000 in additional pledge funds, which is just a huge amount of private donations. So I know it's been years of a tremendous amount of work, and just commend their dedication and the amount of fundraising they've been able to do. So,
excellent, thank you. All right, we're at the final opportunity for people to speak, members of the public, individuals in council. You may raise your hand to be recognized to speak. Each speaker will be given up to 3 minutes. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Wanted to finish my comments from earlier regarding Kendallwood. My point in reading the 10/2023 statement is because in that neighborhood, it was when the zoning ordinance, when you all were considering that, they were asking you to basically go against what some of the residents were saying. If you look back at meetings regarding Kendallwood, we were asked to focus on what the 9-member advisory panel say they wanted. That's a conflict there. And in this instance, what the 9-member advisory panel said they wanted does not work for the majority of low-income citizens in Charlottesville. So that needs to be revisited. With AMI set at exact levels, 30%, 50%, 60%, instead of 0 to 30, 30 to 50, 60 to 80, at those levels, that means that you leave a lot of individuals out. And in some of the instances that we're finding over the last week, that means that someone could live in a 50% income apartment, but need to live in a 30% income AMI apartment or lower, but have to meet the rent of the 50% or higher unit. That means that their rent burden and cost burden overall, and that needs to be addressed. My notes are all over the place, but I tried to write them down there. Originally, with Friendship Court, 80% to 90% was the original proposal that we got. I fought for it to remain at 60% because, as you see now, 60% looks very differently and 80% looks very differently than it did in 2018. And that is only going to continue in Charlottesville. You all just voted on what Charlie Armstrong proposal, that no developer is offering lower AMI units without it benefiting them more. I don't know enough about this because I haven't looked into it, but I remember previous conversations with them, and I know that much. But that means that there's a higher concentration of lower income people in one area. That's part of what you all keep saying you all don't want. And while we're taking land like Friendship Court that has prioritized lower income people at 30% or less AMI and diversifying it with up to 80%, which is really significant. In one of Sunshine's recent reports, it says his median income at Kendallwood, Friendship Court, was $14,000. That's much lower than 30% AMI. If you don't prioritize those families, they become the individuals that were in the back of this room fighting for housing for themselves. You're just creating a larger problem under the pretense of a very liberal community that's investing a lot of money, which you are, but who are you investing it for? No, my time is up, but as someone who lives in the Belmont neighborhood, you cannot prioritize citations. Where that accident happened, there was a hill that that car would have went up or down, where the speed increased naturally if you're coming down the hill, and if you're going up the hill, it decreases. South First Street is empty at this time, but the black and brown families Catherine talked about, they're not there to tell you what they need in a community that has been neglected because we live there. So don't make the decision just solely off of who came in this room and talked about traffic calming. And we do want people to be, I walk all the time, I want to be safe. But you have to think about what it means if you're sending cops into neighborhoods with low-income people and what that means for them as you think about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak?
Before we close, I have an item. Our city engineer shared with me that there is an ongoing effort to consider a technical temporary placement in the role of traffic engineer, just to demonstrate that we're looking at all options because we have not been able to fill that position. So in addition to looking at contracting it out, because that may not work either, we just may not have a firm to respond, we're also looking for a skill level temp that we might then be able to consider for permanent placement at some point in the future. But I just wanted to share that as a part of the ongoing efforts of what we're looking at.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Could I ask one question? I don't know, maybe Mr. Sanders or Mr. Freeze or somebody. Bill Emery had asked, had made a comment, complaint about something that I didn't know anything about, a reclassification or recategorization
It's
of
an
roads.
MP, yeah.
It's an
So
MPO matter.
It's something being driven by not only VDOT, but like the federal. So what I was going to do was go to Christine Jacobs and say, can you please unpack this for us? I don't think it's something we have any control over, but I could be wrong.
I can touch base on that briefly. So the main thing to know, and I spoke with Mr. Emery about this as well, so he's aware, is that the city controls our own streets, right? We own our streets, we control our streets. So whatever the VDOT classification is, it does not reflect a change or an intention to change the actual streets on the ground. But looking at that classification appears to open up the opportunity for more funding to come to the city for our maintenance, the maintenance dollars we get by reclassifying these roads. So basically, the roads qualify for a higher classification under federal standards. So if we put them into that higher classification, we get more money for them. But it doesn't change anything about how we choose to design those roads.
The implication that I derived from his comment was that by classifying them as basically as larger roads, we're legitimizing wider, faster, potentially more dangerous to pedestrian.
Right, and that's a reflection of the design. His concern is that if we change that designation, we are saying that we are going to redesign these streets to be higher speed, higher volume streets, and that's not what we're saying. But I do recognize and said to him that there's a communication aspect of this, that we need to really be clear about what we're doing, and we need to be careful about the life that labels can have, right, beyond what our intentions might be. So this is something that we'll be looking into more, and it is something I believe the MPO still has to take up.
And if you want to look at the review of the discussion MPO already had, it's in the August 28th meeting.
At the MPO Tech.
Oh, but the MPO
was
policy.
I'm sorry, it was at the policy meeting? I'm sorry.
Yeah, and so you can either watch the video or just, it's in the agenda packet, a presentation about classification.
Right.
Okay.
I just found out about this when Mr. Emery's email came up, so
Yeah.
this is what I've been able to gather thus far.
Yeah, and I just likewise only read it today and don't really know what it means, but I will say it potentially freaked me out in that extensively throughout both Fifeville and Belmont, a huge amount of streets were moved to a new classification, which at least legally allows them to have wider widths and faster speed limits. I'm also, I guess the other question it raised, which may not be the case, is if there's any situation where if we went for like a smart scale application that involved those roads, is there anything about these classifications that VDOT would force design elements onto us?
I think those are good questions that we need to get an answer to, yeah. That's what I'm worried about when I say labels have a way of living on beyond what our intentions might be.
And we know VDOT is, at the moment, pursuing changes to prioritize expanding the width and prominence of roads, at least as I understand it, so.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Nope.
Good? Okay. With no further business, the meeting is now adjourned.